COVID-19 has impacted the Indian textile and clothing industry. The lockdown has impacted earnings, employment, consumer spending. And the country's textiles ministry has hinted that an economic stimulus package may not be just quite as generous. The industry needs to reorient itself. Welcome to Textile Excellence presents the Textile Chat Show. Today we will talk about how the industry needs to be innovative in all its business processes. To better understand this journey, we have with us Mr. Updeep Singh, Deputy CEO, Sutlej Industries. Welcome to the Textile Chat Show.
Thank you, Reena. Thank you for inviting me on this textile chat, and I hope you and all of your near and dear ones are fine, and please do take care of yourself.
We also have with us Mr. Thompson Joseph, CEO, Trizla India. Welcome to the show, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Ms. Mittal. I'm very happy to be a part of this chat show.
Mr. Prabhu Damodaran is convener, Indian Texpreneurs Federation. Under his leadership, ITF has become one of the few forward-looking, proactive textile associations in the country. Welcome to the show, Mr. Damodaran.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for inviting me.
And finally, we have Mr. Gaurav Parmar, Director, Rimtex Group. Rimtex is an important spares and accessories supplier to the spinning industry and has an invaluable role to play in the seamless restarting of textile factories in the country. Welcome to our show, Mr. Parmar.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Mr. Singh, let's start the discussion with you. As we know, the industry has suffered order cancellations, non-payments, delayed payments, other issues. What changes and innovative approaches in business strategies and business relationships will you have to follow to avoid such hardships going forward?
Reena, that's a very good question. As COVID-19 pandemic has presented various government, companies, individuals with extraordinary global health challenge and humanitarian challenge, and also has affected the economies across the world. In fact, I would say that there is an inverse correlation between the efforts being put in to flatten the curve of infection rate and the depth of economic disruption. I mean, the longer the lockdown we are in, the bigger will be the impact on the economy as well. See, in today's context, if I have to look at the last of the few pandemics like SARS, or I would say financial recession in 2008, and this COVID-19 pandemic is very different. In this pandemic, we have a structural damage in terms of supply and demand both. So therefore, this is a very, very different and one of its kind of economical effect we are witnessing. And if we look at the various curves to get into back to normal, for example, V, U or L, I would say that I foresee that we might get into something called sawtooth curve, where we'll have recovery, then we may have again impact for at least for 12 to 18 months till such time we are able to get to the vaccine. And I think this sort of a sawtooth recovery is little more difficult than the U1, where we'll find some structural damages already done in terms of the supplies, in terms of the demands. And the worst part is that the virus trajectory is still unknown. Effectiveness of containment is still unknown. How the consumer is going to behave, how the companies are going to behave, how the businesses are going to behave is still unknown. So with all these unknowns, all businesses have to move on. So as you rightly said, we are facing a lot of cancellation of orders. We are facing, we might face an issue on the recoveries, and this once the lockdown opens, and we'll have to gauge how do we go about it. So the companies cannot go by the projections which we had made on, say, I would say as late as 19th of March. So we'll have to change our strategies. In fact, I would say that at this point of time, no single strategies is going to work, in my opinion. We have to have a dynamic thing. We have to view situation each day, each week, and based on that, we have to reorient our businesses to to develop altogether a different model. As far as industries are concerned, we've passed through 3 phases in this, what I feel. One would be survival, which we have survived so far in the sense that we have looked at the employee well-being, their safety, we have looked at the cash, we have to manage the cash is a king. Then comes stabilization mode. So once the lockdowns are open, we have to have restart of the workplaces, we have to reorient our workforce, and most of all, we have to fix the broken supply chain. And then comes our drive. Drive is we have to have capabilities in terms of ecosystem capabilities, in terms of innovation, in terms of customer obsession, in terms of agility in manufacturing. So this is how I see and presume the businesses are going to behave in coming months.
Mr. Singh, can you elaborate on customer obsession?
In terms of, if I have to look at this phrase of customer obsession, in this I would say that we have to engage with the customer, we have to serve the customer, we have to not only look at, we not have to service only the needs of the customer, but what I mean by customer obsession is we have to make customer feel the need of the product which we can give as innovative product. So that sort of service level for a customer, we have to present something new to him. So that is what I mean by customer obsession, which is a little ahead, which is a little more than customer engagement.
Mr. Thompson, how are you reacting to this COVID crisis?
In terms of COVID-19, we have, it's a common problem that's happening across the world. And as an industry, we have to now adapt or change our style of functioning. And one of the things as per the government guideline is the social distancing and the hygiene standards that we need to follow. Now, what we have seen from this COVID-19 is the way we conduct, ourselves has changed a lot. Like for example, a good example is the online media. If you see the education system, for example, they have adapted very well, and we can see the classes happening online now from the children and right from the professional courses to the school level. Now, one more change that is happening is the webinars. If you see the webinars happening in the past few days during lockdown, the advantage of this is that you save a lot of productive time. You have also the fatigue factor, and second thing is you just log in and log out. So this is something that will be the new norm of working. Now, when we say another new change that is coming in the industry is the work from home concept. Now, a lot of industries are adapting to the work from home concept. It is quite surprising to note that even R&D, the engineering developments, are happening today from their respective homes. The engineers are designing, they're coordinating with the offices, and things are happening in that way. The other thing is when you look at manufacturing also will have to change in a big way. We cannot work the way the manufacturing was working in the past. Social distancing is now a norm, so you have to reroute your workshops. You have to set it as per the social distancing. We'll have to keep very high hygiene standards. So all these SOP COVID-19 guidelines described by the government needs to be followed. And the other thing is the industry has to get accustomed to the video conferencing concept. Like, if you see all the internal communications are happening today through video conferencing. We are not allowed to meet in a conference room. So you can say from the conference room, we are practically going into the virtual rooms. The business, maybe in the future, the business meetings or the business associate meetings will also happen practically in a virtual room. Then, when you look at the economic situation, the market is, we know the market was abruptly stopped. Industries went through economic crisis because there's no operations happening. So under that, we need to re-strategize maybe every industry. You will have to bifurcate into maybe 3 different types of models. You can say a mid-economic scenario. You can say a moderate economic scenario, or you can say a worst-case economic scenario. Now, if I look at the way the industry is closed, the moderate economic scenario looks a distinct possibility. So we have 2 case scenarios. We can say worst case scenario and a mid-economic case scenario. So under those circumstances, you will have to strategize the operations, how you can negotiate and enter through these 2 scenarios. And we will have to define the path, how to go forward in this thing. The second part is cash flow. Every industry is going to face a huge cash flow in the coming days. And how we maintain our cash flow will be the key for our operations. The third, I would say, is, we have seen in a lot of news, what is happening in the newspapers or in the television media is the reverse migration that is happening. Now, this is really going to be a big challenge for the industries because the labor-intensive industries are going to face a huge crisis, I would say, that how to get the migrant labor back. Somewhere, I would say, we let down the migrant, and their morale has been quite down. They are demotivated or demoralized. The industry really needs to get these people again back into a motivated labor force. They need to be pacified and brought back. Otherwise, what will happen is the lockdown opens and then you suddenly find that we have another crisis, that the industry cannot work due to a crisis of labor now. So this is something which will be the big challenges going to come in the next coming days.
Mr. Prabhu, you have a complete overview of the industry from fiber to apparel. How would you react to this COVID situation?
Okay. Actually, we are facing an unprecedented situation, no doubt about that. And now the only way forward is to engage with buyers in a better way, because every one of us have a long-standing relationship. So we are engaging with buyers to avoid cancellations and trying to process our materials with different designs, and a lot of works are going on. And the way forward is we need to diversify our markets and keep engaging with our existing customers, and also try to make more value-added products instead of commodities in apparel space, use more synthetics in our product space, so that whatever the China is vacating a lot of space now, even as per the March data, US data, and first time Vietnam overtaken China as the largest supplier of apparels to the US market. Mostly China is vacating the synthetic space. That business is going to Vietnam. We need to capture that. So a lot of works need to be done in the coming days. Once we are able to overcome these kind of a crisis, financially we are facing troubles, and we are expecting a package from the government, and some kind of there is a news going on that banks are asking a government guarantee for the incremental credit. So if government submit some kind of a proposal to the bankers, naturally credit flow will start, and we can overcome the short-term pains and look forward for the new businesses.
Mr. Parmar, having heard from the other panelists, how is Rimtex gearing up to face the COVID situation?
It's a very difficult situation, extraordinary situation that we all are in. The world has changed as we know it. And first and foremost, we all have to accept this reality. Now at Rimtex, we have accepted this and have spent past few weeks in contemplating on the way ahead. What we have come to realize is that more than product or offerings, the changes will be impacted on how we work. The evolution of product and services will continue the way it was. Maybe minor slowdown here and there, but the product development trajectory will continue the way we had planned. But as a group, we are focusing on the process more. Our company is built on the foundation of trust, innovation, and long-lasting relationships. And now, in the new world over, in completely all over, where contactless working will be a compulsion, we are developing ways to keep our relations as agile as we can, and as it was earlier. A lot of initiatives are being put in place at Rimtex. The transformation has begun. All the systems are being realigned to meet the evolving needs of the global markets. I would like to share the 4 principles upon which our business strategies will be based upon. Would be, say, smart working, augmented solutions, flexible production, and empathy-driven process creation. This 4 strategy, we call it SAFE, S-A-F-E. On the floor front, most important is the safety, which we all are going to do, and we have developed processes to keep COVID-19 related risks at bay. So furthermore, we understand that this time to think larger universe for us to include the entire spinning and textile machinery fraternity, and we want to share our thinking with all of them. To our every stakeholder, we want to offer more value, and one of the key things to achieve this is a 360-degree digital expansion plan. As a whole, I would say we want to link a lot of our knowledge and product development plans with our digital assets, and to play the role of an opportunity creator for a lot of people.
Mr. Parmar, how will the economy be affected by this crisis?
What I understand is that there is a lot of stock in the transit in the entire supply chain, starting from the last link of retailers to the fiber, which is ginned. As the economies would resume, the initial quarter will largely see the settlement of this stock, and so there may not be any immediate shoot up as suggested. It will be gradual, and we at Rimtex are equipped to handle any sudden upsurge. Since most of our workforce is from regional proximity, production resumption will be quicker compared to any other in the industry.
Yeah. Mr. Thompson, human resources management is more important than ever. At the same time, some state governments are diluting labor laws. In this scenario, what changes in worker relationships and management and employee relationships will you need to follow?
I think in the COVID-19 scenario, it has taught us a lot of things. What you rightly said, human resource management is also definitely going to be a key role, and that is going to change the way it is going to happen in the next few months, I would say. When the government announced the shutdown, for example, I think the industry was not prepared to have such an extended shutdown or lockdown. So we were not mentally prepared how to shut our operations. There were cases of the machines shut abruptly. There was no case of preservation of machines or how to start the machine. So I think we need to have proper guidelines or a standard operating procedures that God forbid if another COVID-22 or 24, we don't know what can come next, that when such a thing happens and there is one more scenario of this lockdown, that the industry has very clear protocols of how to shut your operations, how to preserve the machines, how to restart the operations back. The second point is that in such cases there needs to be an emergency response team in terms of human resource, that who will coordinate since everybody is sitting at home. So we need to have an emergency response team which is coordinating with the concerned departments or concerned agencies, and they can remotely control the things so that we have a proper shutdown or proper procedures. The third thing is the communication flow. I think it's very important that there is a proper communication flow happening between the employees and the organization. The employees need to know what is happening in the organization. Vis-a-vis the organization also needs to know whether the employees are safe and secure. One big thing what we can say is going to happen, or in human resource what is going to change, is going to be a human mapping, I would say. We need to map our human resources, how they are geographically placed across the regions. Since if such a scenario comes, you have a red zone or a hot spot and you have the people locked inside, and imagine you have other departments or sections, all people reporting to work, then a situation comes that the whole department is not able to function. So I think when we are recruiting, it is not only now going to be key skill attributes, it will also be a question of how your people are coming from which geographical regions, that we may have to strategize the employee recruitment, so that in case of such scenarios happening, that the organizations can still run their companies without any hitch. And this will be a part of the new recruitment maybe policies for many companies in the coming days. The other point is multi-skilling. I think there will be a lot of inputs going into multi-skilling, because today if you have people not coming or not reporting for a work, then you need a multi-skilled person from another section who can take over this particular section and still keep your show running.
Mr. Thompson, has Trishler taken any steps to combat future COVID-like situations?
Yes. See, what Trishler has done is basically we have mapped our people on okay, it's not a Google map, but we have mapped it on the Ahmedabad map, that where the employees are coming and what we may have to do in the future, because we faced this problem during the lockdown. We had certain people totally locked out and they could not enter, and we had other people coming and this particular sections could not work. So what we are going to do in the future is, if these people, maybe we will have to move them to another section and we may have to bring the people from other section, and that is where my point came of multi-skilling, that we will have to do a multi-skilling so that we can switch positions, or we can have a strategy so that people are being distributed across the regions.
Mr. Singh, you have so many units across India. What is the HR department at Sutlej doing to face this crisis?
I would say that during this period of post-COVID, our human resource management will play a very vital role. And as a human resource manager, they have to come up with a leadership to sustain these effects and help employees, both all categories of employees, white collars, blue collars, everyone, because this approach would be very, very different than what it was pre-COVID. Here, we need to engage with the employees, because this moment of lockdown over the last few days, this must have been very stressing. So there are job loss fears, there are income losses fears, there are health issues, there are safety issues. So employees, we have to engage with them, we have to be very collaborative, we have to compassionate. So empathy and compassion, these are the two things which are going to play a very vital role in an organization, and in which I would say that HR has to play a very, very important role along with the leadership, number one. Number two, as far as the workman is concerned, I mean, this is a time when we are witnessing a lot of reverse migration, which will have impact on the businesses in next at least couple of quarters, I foresee, because a lot of migrant workers are moving out of different states. For example, if you look at the north of India, where we have operations in J&K, in Himachal Pradesh, in Rajasthan, there are migrant workers who are going back to the states like Bihar, UP, Odisha. So once they move out, there will be a vacuum, there will be a gap, for which we need to have innovative approach in terms of getting them back, even looking after their well-being, even in their states, because these are your trained workmen. We have invested, companies have invested in them for their training. So they have gone back on humanitarian reasons. They wanted to go and meet their families in this time of pandemic. So we have to be very much aware of this, and we have to do something different. For example, I would say that we have to have camp, company may have to have camp in their states. We have to get them back in a couple of months. We have to assure them that they are being taken care of. So these are the things which we have to really do, because they are the heart of any organization, especially in textiles. So this is what my take on HR would be in coming days.
Mr. Parmar, how are you at Rimtex taking up this challenge due to COVID-19?
At the core concept level, there aren't changes at Rimtex, but most importantly, safety and well-being of our employees has always been vital. And as per the demand of the current situation, we have taken up all the adequate measures to ensure each one's physical well-being. Special efforts are made to not sustain the economic pressure so that employee welfare is not compromised. So it is very important at this difficult times that we are with our employees, staff, and it is a family as a whole. So we are together in this, and we are going by our process orientation. We've set up alternate mechanisms which will allow us to switch gears. That is work as varying scales at short notices. That's what our change, I would say, is. Yeah.
Mr. Prabhu, has ITF taken any initiatives towards human resources management for its members?
Now we can say that the whole world is empowered, because due to communication technology, even the basic level worker are aware about their rights and opportunities around the places. So with this kind of a communication, everyone is empowered with knowledge. Definitely it's a new normal. We need to give a lot of importance to the workforce. Each company, more than technology, the real assets is human being, no doubt about that. And in changing environment, even post-COVID, that will gain a lot of momentum. And even in our association, we used to, we initiated an ITF Leadership Academy. The main theme of the academy is to train the middle level managers, supervisory staffs, to handle the workforce in a better way, so that the ecosystem, whole ecosystem will work in a better engagement way. Employee engagement should improve, and India, you know that already employee engagement level, we are better, and still a lot of scope to improve. This is one area. And second area, in terms of productivity, naturally whatever the earnings they are earning, it should be linked with productivity, so that apart from the minimum wages, we need to improve their skills, so that skills we need to always upskill, and multi-skilling we need to educate them, so that the whole ecosystem will improve.
Mr. Parmar, coming back to you, with the COVID-19 background, according to you, in what direction will technology innovations and product innovations move?
The COVID and the background, I think everybody has to come up with a different plan altogether in terms of innovation and product related all strategies. In the textile industry, the changes might be the scale of demand and not the nature of demand. That's what we feel. As I mentioned earlier, the product and technological development trajectories will continue to be the way they were, I would say. Yes, the scales of manufacturing and method of shop floor management will go through a change faster than otherwise it would have, yes. In the last years, Industry 4.0 has come along, accepted in textile as well, and it has been growing world over. As terms, India is not very ahead in implementing 4.0 compared to the West, because it has its own reason, because of cheap labor, availability of enough labor. But things will have to change, and keeping, as Rimtex is always ahead in innovation. Last year in ITMA Barcelona, we introduced, showcased a breakthrough technology based upon the concept of sliver intelligence. We call it WISCAN. In the times to come, WISCAN will prove to be a major step for the spinners to move to spinning 4.0 standard. Apart from its deep intelligent capabilities, WISCAN has inbuilt capabilities of remote monitoring and process control capabilities, which will be a boon in the post-COVID era. And especially when now with the recent address from the PM about localization, to be vocal about local, I think the localization might go to the extent of states. So there might be a lot of investments in the state itself. Every state might look upon it, and the migration of the workforce might change. So some states would have enough supply of the labor force, some state might not. So the states which do not have might have to look towards automation, AI, and Industry 4.0, especially in textiles.
Mr. Thompson, what are your views on the future direction of technology innovations?
I think prior to the COVID-19, the industry was moving on Industry 4.0, artificial intelligence and digitalization. So I think that same trend will continue during the COVID crisis. But what is going to be the game changer is going to be automation. There will be, I think, a big automation happening across, I would say, not only textile, across the industry. That key focus will go into a lot of automation. And what automation will take more importance will be in conveying systems, automatic transport systems. So these are things that will be, I think, playing a big role in terms of what we see the change that is going to come. Now, another movement in terms of product technology or product movement, it will be more focused on the hygiene sector. Since with the COVID situation, we can see a lot of requirements of hygiene, masks, aprons, and medical linen, everything coming into the picture. So the industry will definitely focus in this direction, and we will have a lot of movement, I think, or technology innovation. Maybe you may find washable aprons and washable linens coming up, all these things with the new technology which are more hygiene. So this can be one thing that can move in the hygiene sector. In terms of product technology, I think this is not something new. If you see over the past few years, product technology has been always evolving. They have been, year after year, you find products improving, and that will keep continuing. So this is not something new. But there can be some new things which will add up to this. One is, I would say, energy conservation. A lot of focus will go into energy efficiency. Then you will say environment conservation. I think we will focus more on environment part of it. So, if you look at today for food, any food packets or anything, we have a nutrition facts on the food packets. Now, I will not be surprised that, maybe in coming few years, you will have on your garment packaging the amount of carbon footprints that you are using. This can become a trend, because if consumer is getting more focused on environment, maybe they may start asking for what is the carbon footprint that you are using. So this can be also a game changer, that there will be coming that we will start putting up carbon footprints on our packaging systems. So environment friendly initiatives will start developing. So this will be a new trend that will start coming up.
Mr. Thompson, Trishula is also into the non-wovens area. Do you see more inquiries and demand coming up in this segment in the coming months?
We are already seeing a lot of inquiries in the past, I would say, few weeks. People who have not been even in textile are showing a lot of interest in the hygiene sector. There has been queries coming in from North India, from South India, that they would like to go into the mask, they would like to go into the apron, and somehow they have come to know that Trutzler is in this field. So this is definitely going to be one of the key focus areas for Trutzler in the coming days, that we will also like to get more involved into the hygiene and the non-woven sector.
Mr. Singh, in the post-COVID era, would you be changing your product portfolio?
Very good question. I would say that post-COVID, our product portfolio, companies will have a changed product portfolio to suit to the customer needs thereafter. In terms of textiles, if you look at textiles, we foresee that there will be a lot of healthcare product coming in. There are a lot of products with various finishes like antiviral, antimicrobial, antibacterial, and so on and so forth. Because hygiene is going to play a very, very important role, and the consumer behavior will be largely, influenced by hygiene. So every company in textiles will have to look at these sort of products starting from spinning. Even in spinning, we have to look at such product where we spin yarn with such inherent properties. So this is one part of innovation in product. Similarly, if we go up the value chain in fabric, these sort of finishes would be important things to do for any company in terms of product innovation. Then different fibers. We can not only depend on, say, cotton or polyester. We have to look at various sustainable fibers as well that these companies will have to process. For example, India today is, if we look at in India today is consuming, out of total fiber, India is 70%, almost 70% on cotton and 30% on man-made. Whereas it is the other way around world over. So I see that there will be a lot of impetus on man-made fiber, and there will be a lot of finishes which will be going in for this man-made fiber. So I see that man-made fiber would be a fiber in future in India as well.
And so do you see a surge in demand for man-made fibers?
Luckily, in our company, we have almost 60% of the capacity where we do synthetics, we do man-made fibers, and also we can shift. So we are one of the leading companies in India where we spin man-made fibers, dyed fibers. So we have all these products in our product portfolio.
Mr. Prabhu, what would your suggestions be to the textile and apparel industry in post-COVID times?
Okay. Actually, we need fundamentally we need to look into the 2 to 3 aspects of our business. Number one, we need scale. That's why we suggested with the union government that we also need mega textile apparel parks in the country, which can produce large quantum of goods in a single place. It should be an integrated one And even recently we suggested that we can partner with some countries. For example, if Tamil Nadu is able to set up one park in near port like Thothukudin, we can align with a specific country like German or which are the big consuming markets. Even we can invite FDI particularly to that park, so that some kind of a collaboration and investment, and that park can work for particular region. So those kind of things we can explore. Number one, we need scale. Scale is the mantra we need to adopt. Even with these kind of parks, we can motivate the medium-sized textile companies already performing well in our area to expand there with perfect hostel facilities. Now we are seeing a lot of migrant worker issues. If we have such kind of a massive infrastructure with housing and all, we can definitely compete in terms of business with China. For example, in low value product, for 10,500 crores worth of t-shirts we are exporting, we are getting a very basic, it's all like $1, $1.5, $2 items. We need scale to compete in this space. So scale is one area. Second, we compared our exports versus Vietnam. In 24 items, HS codes in apparels, they are leading in 18 items. All the 18 are MMF based. So we need to step into a big way in MMF space, and from in terms of technology innovation, definitely we are lacking at least 10 years behind with competition. We need a national mission to drive this, because an SME manufacturer doing 20 crore, 30 crore, he can't imagine all these things, and he may not try a design studio. So that a national mission towards how we can take the MMF ecosystem forward should be the way forward. These two areas we need to attack.
Mr. Singh, sentiments in China have cooled considerably across the globe. In India, what strategies will the industry have to follow to do away with China as a textile market and as a textile supplier?
China, now we see that most of the countries are talking about China. They want to shift their buying out of China. They want to shift their companies out of China. But I tell you honestly, there's lot of homework to be done to get to that level, even in India. If we in India have to really compete and take the share from China in terms of manufacturing, we have to look at various things in our value chain. First of all, we have to have efficient manufacturing. We have to have that scale. We have to have infrastructure. We have to look at the costs. And above all, I would say we have to collaborate across the value chain. Unless we do these things, I don't think a shift from China would help India. And to be very honest with you, this is the time that India can take on China. There are reasons for this. The advantage India has is there is a large domestic economy. That's a very good news. At the same time, we have good expertise, but we have to scale up the operation. We have to look at innovative ways of manufacturing. We have to look at what you call efficiencies across the manufacturing, across the value chain. We have to look at automation. And above all, we have to compete with the cost. Because if you look at countries, they would like to shift their buying to India. But when it comes to cost, when it comes to service, they shy away. I have a personal example with me where I had a couple of American companies wanting to shift their sourcing base from China to India. But we could not do much because we could not give them service, or even we could not compete with price at that point of time. Today, we are better placed, but then we have a long way to go as a country to do that. So this is my take, that we need to do some homework. We need to collaborate across the value chain to beat China, to face China, and to get the share from China. Even the smallest share from China in the world textile trade, if it comes to India, we can double our presence in world textile trade.
Mr. Thompson, how do you see India competing with China in the coming months?
See, China, when you look at China, China is the world's largest exporter in textile market, as we all know that. And India is also a part of it, definitely, but in a very small level. But what is surprising is, how Vietnam has come in the last few years. If you see, Vietnam has really moved up the ladder. They have nearly crossed Turkey and Bangladesh. Now, somewhere India's volumes have not picked up. We have been talking about we would like to grow the textile market into to be a big global player, but there has been some lacuna in achieving this. Now, it's very nice to be emotional, but sometimes we need to be realistic. So, if you want to be a real global player, you need to go into the big player league. I think we need to have a roadmap, and the roadmap needs to be very clearly defined between the government and the industry. They need to have very clear guidelines, how we are going to do it, when we are going to do, and who will do it basically. Now, if you ask, India has the potential, yes, we have the potential, we have the skills, we have the competence, and we have the willpower to do it. It's only the direction that we need, and we can definitely, I would say, go in that way. If you look at sentiments, we are still. Look at the mobile market. Now, most of the mobiles are still coming from China, and we are still buying it. So it takes its own time. Basically, that it's not that easy that we can say textile can totally shift from China. I don't think it's going to happen in such a fast period of time. And the second thing is, when we look at importing of machinery from China, this will depend on the purchaser. If a purchaser, what is he looking at? He's looking at product, he's looking at performance, and he's looking at price, and definitely technology. Now, if this technology is available, and we can say it is made in India, I'm sure they will not go to look out beyond India or to say any other country. They will be happy to purchase that equipment from India. So, if the technology is not available, then definitely yes, there is a chances that maybe it is China, or they may look at some other country to purchase this. So I think it depends more on the purchasing body which is going to do this.
Mr. Parmar, how would you react to combating China?
We have been, it's a globalization, and this trend, we are into globalization basically, and this trend will not immediately change, at least for I would say 7-8 quarters coming. Next quarters. So, and it's a strong market. So China is here to stay, I would say. But definitely, we have to see to the less and less dependency on other countries like China, and we have to develop our own self-sufficient, productions.
Mr. Prabhu, the industry agrees that supply chain integration is important. How can the industry achieve this?
Supply chain integration, in terms of product market diversification, we are concentrated with only few countries. You take our apparel exports, and why can't we approach Japan or Russia? Why it's not happening? Russia imports around 60,000 crores worth of apparels and textiles. Our share is just 500 crore. Same story with Japan. Even Bangladesh captured Japanese market in the last 4 years in a better way. Why it's not happening? We feel that the efforts is very less from industry side as well as the government side. We proposed recently with one idea with the government. Now even for our own Coimbatore city, for smart city project, we are partnering with German city. Why can't a Tirupur cluster partner with Japan and work exclusively for Japan market and continue the efforts for 3 to 4 years, taking delegation from here and taking delegation from there, and whatever the Japan needs, this cluster, we should train 50-60 companies initially to make products to Japan, so that these kind of a cluster to cluster engagements will bring real changes in the business. Or otherwise just we will tell, please diverse your market, please focus on other markets. That will be only in paper. We need to define some systems. This kind of for example, NCR region in Delhi can focus on Russia. So concentrated efforts and repeating the efforts is the basic necessity. We Tirupur are ready to work with Japan government, with embassies. They can identify a partner cluster in Japan and both can work together, and even FDA can happen in this manner. So we need to try new ideas.
And so, do you have any suggestions for the government in this regard?
Actually, now there are a lot of entrepreneurs are waiting for the government support. It's quite natural. Every one of us suffered because recently this COVID created a lot of turbulence in everyone's business. So, for example, whatever we have loans in the companies, we need at least a year of moratorium. The 3 months, 4 months, we can't come back quickly into the business, and without earnings we can't repay. So this 1 year moratorium, whatever the pending dues in this 1 year can be converted as a 2-year term loan. And for example, for the current situation we need to act. Definitely yarn and fabric will be in excess supply in India now. So far yarn and fabrics not covered under any export incentive scheme. So whatever the RODTEP government is planning, it is not an export incentive scheme, it is a duty refund scheme. Already embedded taxes are there very much in the yarn manufacturing stage and fabric manufacturing stage. So it's the right time to add yarn and fabric in this forthcoming RODTEP scheme. So we need to work post-COVID situation to handhold the entrepreneurs in terms of banking support as well as little support in the export promotions, so that we can all come out. And third, as I said in the past, we can try new ideas to grow our business in a better way.
Mr. Thompson, what are your views on supply chain integration?
This is a very good question. When we say the supply chain in textile is a very big field. We talk about farm to fashion. And what happens is that if the government is not involved, then definitely I think the stakeholders are too big in this, in the country. So definitely we need somebody to integrate them. And this, if the government is not doing it, then various textile bodies or the textile associations will have to get involved to integrate them together. There is a shift, changing. It's not that there has been no movement happening in the supply chain. We have moved from the traditional supply chain to the, into a garment supply chain concept. So when you go into a garment supply chain, definitely what the challenges that come is you need to have a faster response time into the backward integration. Otherwise, the fashions keep changing very fast. So this needs, I would say, a very good coordination between the various stakeholders. There has to be a lot of, coordination going on between them. They need to talk to each other. They need to maybe use resources from each other, maybe even competence. If you look at automobile, let us take a simple example of automobile industry. Today, automobile industry is using a lot of resources or shared resources or technology. There are companies who are even buying engines from other companies. So if we want to compete into the international level and we need to be competitive, then I would say we have to learn from each other. We need to use our supply chain in a very effective manner, and there has to be a big thrust put in this, and this definitely can be done, and there are people who can do it. So it will be, I would say, if we do it, it will be good that we can be a big power in the world market in the coming days.
Mr. Parmar, what are your suggestions for integrating the supply chain?
I think the biggest learning that the pandemic has taught the world is not to limit one's thinking in one's own business and enterprise, but think beyond. The various segments of the entire textile value chain are largely organized and doing their bit of for enhancement of the supply chain. I would welcome the development of an umbrella organization which brings together the existing industry bodies, covering the entire supply chain. That is, I would put it as from ground to garment, and the world, towards and work towards greater development of the sector and its consumers. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Mr. Singh, how do you see the future of textile supply chain integration in India?
This is really a need of the hour, I would say. We have to integrate, we have to collaborate across the value chain. For example, if we look at the engine for our growth in textile is garmenting, the final product. If you look at the made-up industry, if you look at the home textile industry, India today is much better placed in home textile industry across the world because they have a controlled value chain, they have a collaborated value chain. We have bigger players who have scaled up and they are making final product and they have a backward integration. Similarly, even if India wants to grow in textiles, garment is the only route and we have to collaborate. See, the issue today is that in India we have a fragmented value chain. We have a spinning, we have a weaving, knitting, then separate processing, fabric, and then it comes to garmenting. And garmenting today is not to that scale. We have neighboring countries like Bangladesh, we have neighboring countries like Sri Lanka, where the garmenting is really scaled up. Similarly now, countries like Vietnam are catching up. In fact, they have really gone ahead. So here what we need to do is a couple of things. One, we have all to support entire value chain starting from spinning to garmenting, have to support garmenting in terms of product, their product mix, their needs. That is one part. Second, we also need, because if we look at the scale, we have the largest scale in spinning, and we have big spinners. We have big spinning companies who have worldwide relationship with various companies, various retailers, even various brands. So we have to capitalize that experience. We have to capitalize that relationships. If a spinning company has a relationship with the retailer or with the big sourcing companies or big retailers, they have to bring that relationship back in India with the garmenters. So we have to look very differently. We have to collaborate. That is how we can grow our textile business across the world. So this is my take, that we need to collaborate, not only supplying the product to the garmenter, but also collaborating with the final customer for him as well, giving him designs, giving him products, giving him the relationships. That is most important, which I see as a collaboration coming in case we have to increase textile from India in India.
Coming back to you, Mr. Prabhu, what can the apparel industry learn from the spinning industry?
Industry side, definitely, even for the basic productivity itself, we need to work more. It's not that everything government should do, we also should gear up. For example, in spinning, you take, we have world scale. Not only in scale, in terms of quality, productivity, energy efficiency, we can rate spinning industry as the best in the world. And so that kind of a duplication should be there with apparel also. It is possible. Now a lot of companies started working on improving the productivity and introducing a lot of automation into the system, so that only thing it's happening with a few companies, it should be a national movement, and end of the day, global or domestic buyer, no one will give 1 rupee more for our inefficiencies. We need to be more efficient, no doubt about that. And fundamental changes, what I mean, one side, this kind of a product diversification, moving towards of scale. Third angle is we need to correct our tax structure. Even after GST, still we are keeping polyester and viscose GST at higher level, 18, 12, and for cotton it is 5. So we need to correct this so that the fiber neutral policy, even for the past 2 years, even in economic survey, chief economic advisors are advocating that we need to correct this so that a level playing field, a fiber neutrality will be there for all products, so that more motivation will come to the industry to step into MMO space. Number one. Number two, even in customs duty also, we have a different duty structures for fiber, yarn, fabric. We need to tweak to the changing situations. We should not allow dumping, as at the same time we should make our industry competitive. So in government side, GST reforms is a basic one. And apart from that, fundamentally, we need to do a bold reforms. Now it's not only textile, any manufacturing sector, if we want to compete, power cost is the major spending for all the textile industries. For example, central government is trying its best to bring power sector reforms. States are opposing, but in spite of that, they should bring that. Two things I want to tell. One is bring power and fuel into GST regime. That will help in a big way. Number two, for example, in IEX, we are able to see that power prices are at 2 rupees 50 paise or 3 rupees. But no one of us are able to buy because we need to pay cross subsidy of 1 rupee 70 paise, 80 paise to the state electricity boards to buy power in exchanges. So we need to remove the power this kind of blockages so that industry will get a competitive power rate so that we can compete globally. So reforms means we need to bring bold reforms like 1991. This is the right time to change our fundamentals and really drive the manufacturing sector towards growth.
Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your invaluable insights. It is heartening for the industry to know that some of its leaders have already begun paving the path towards new recovery and growth. We're sure we will come across more such exemplary achievements in the coming days. I take this opportunity to thank Mr. Damodaran, Mr. Parmar, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Singh.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me being here at the chat show and with the dignitaries here. And I wish that we all come out of this situation as soon as possible and start our routine business and grow from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reena. It had been a pleasure to be part of this textile chat, and thank you very much for inviting me, and all the best to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mittal, and it was a very nice to be a part of this show, and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much for being with us today on the Textile Chat Show. Do let us know how this episode was in the comment section below. We look forward to your suggestions, and kindly do subscribe to our channel. Until we meet again in the next episode of the Textile Chat Show, stay safe, stay healthy. Goodbye.